Okay. Actually, I'm going to close the door. There's some doggos. Hey there. I'm going to close the door. Is that okay? Okay. Welcome everybody to the call. Um, let's see here. Today is a special meeting about Constantinople specifically. So we're going to go ahead and go through first the potential block reward reduction and how long to delay the difficulty bomb. Um, and then we're going to walk through every Constantinople EIP to get an update on the EIPs themselves, if there's any outstanding issues or questions that need to be solved or updates that need to be merged. And then we'll go through client Constantinople updates if there's any ones that are important. And then we'll go through Constantinople testing to see where we're at there. And then if we have time, we may talk about ProgPow, changing the proof of work algorithm to be ASIC resistant. Um, Not sure if we'll get to that or not, and we're going to try to keep this under an hour because the agenda's pretty light. But if it goes a little over, oh well. So Piper has volunteered to kind of start this going about the potential issuance reduction with some ideas. So Piper, take it away.
All right, here I go sticking my neck out. So there are three things on the table that I saw and that we listened to kind of generally get presented last time. Please somebody correct me if I'm categorizing these wrong. We've got a reduction to 1, a reduction to 2, and a EAP that proposes to keep reduction the same but alter the uncle reward mechanism. Somebody confirm that that accurately represents what's on the table right now.
Yes, that does. I would say that the Uncle Reward one is not very popular that I found, but I'm not sure we should take it off the table necessarily. We should discuss it.
That's fine. Can you tell me what it is that's unpopular about it? Is it the lack of issuance reduction, or does it have to do with the actual Uncle Reward mechanism?
I think it's because people don't understand it personally. Like, I haven't seen community feedback on it because people don't understand the Uncle Reward mechanism. So, really, that doesn't mean we should take it off the table because I'm sure someone in here understands it so we can discuss it.
I'd like to actually ask the room that, is there anybody here who has taken the time to truly evaluate it, or who's seen a legit evaluation of that um, changed Uncle Reward mechanism? All right, silence in the room suggests that we need to take one more look at that. So I'm going to shift my perspective here a little bit. My original suggestion was that we adopt a hybrid of that one to adjust the Uncle Reward mechanism as well as issuance reduction down to 2. There seems to be a pretty solid consensus that an issuance reduction is needed. Generally, I'm a fan of moderation, and we can always change this again at some point. So 2 seems like a nice safe estimation. And there's not going to be like I don't feel like there's a way for us to really narrow in on an exact value here. And then the Uncle Reward mechanism was under the assumption that there was a decent amount of like kind of strong validity to the changed mechanism. But I think that there's homework still to be done there. So that one gets kind of shifted off to the side. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people's opinions at play here, and there isn't an objective right or wrong because everybody's got different ideas about monetary policy and what we should be paying miners and all of these things. So on some level here, we just need to take a stab at something in the right direction and go from there.
Yeah. Real quick, I think that EIP 1295, the one that messes with Uncle Rewards, um, I believe that one was actually uh, basically a replacement for EIP, or not a replacement, but an alternative to the one lowering the issuance. So if we do both things, I think that's going to lower, basically, that would be the equivalent of lowering the issuance even more to something like 1 ETH. And I think that, so I'm seeing in the chat that there was something like this might affect smaller miners. I'm not sure if that's true or not. So I'm a little hesitant to just say that the uncle reward mechanism is something that's been thought out enough, but I would say that I don't think people would be happy combining the two because it was set up to avoid doing the 2 ETH reduction in the first place.
I understand that, and I think that you are correct in terms of what it was intended for. I am maybe not speaking directly for, whenever I originally said I was gonna come in and I had an idea of where we should go, that was under the assumption that that had been evaluated well. It sounds like it hasn't. My real takeaway was that there is a game mechanic right now that encourages uncles, and I thought that if we had a solid mechanism that was supposed to fix that, that it would be prudent to adopt it. But if we are not sure about that, then strictly going with an issuance reduction to 2 seems like a very sane and simple change. I'd be love to hear other people's feedback on that.
I'm gonna chime in with some of those things I said last time, in that everything I view in the issuance reductions in the context of proof of work is kind of like incremental compromise to get us to kind of encourage the community, keep things moving sanely until we move to proof of stake. When we move to proof of stake, we're targeting, say, 10% of all Ether staked at in the range of 5% return per year. So you're looking at like 0.5% issuance at that point, or even 1% issuance at that point, which I think the community will be certainly happy. And so again, like, this is all just incremental compromise until we get to that end goal. And I think 2, in my opinion, satisfies that in incremental compromise.
So yeah, I would agree with both of you that 2 seems a good enough step in the right direction. But regarding the whole uncle issuance thing, so I've, as far as I understand it, the change is that we keep the uncle reward but remove the nephew reward, which means that the guy who included the uncle gets the miner gets a reward, but not the one who included it. Is that correct, or is it the other way around?
That sounds right to me, but I'm not gonna bet on it for my memory.
Because if it's that kind of zeroes the incentive to include anyone else's blocks, which is a bit odd, and I don't know, it seems a bit unbalanced to reward one of the guys but not the other. I mean, obviously you should reward the one in mind block which did not become canonical. He should, I mean, it's fair to give him something because it does contribute to the total difficulty and bring the chain. And there should also be an incentive to include the block, and not only include the ones from your own pool or the ones that you collaborate with or whatever. So I don't really understand the the idea behind setting one of those rewards to 0. Yeah, but then I'm not an expert on that either. So if anyone can explain it, that'd be great.
So what I'm thinking, sorry, is that EIP 1295 is explicitly conflicting with the idea to reduce the block reward to 2 ETH. And I think merging them into a hybrid version doesn't make any sense in my in my eyes, and I think we should go with 2 ETH. So I agree with with everyone also speaking up for this, because this is like the most moderate proposal we have right now. There are a lot of voices that want to like reduce block reward to 1 ETH, because you know we have like a strong user base of investors that want to really reduce the issuance as much as possible. But we also have like, we had the miners in the last call that said they would agree to a small reduction, but they would probably and sorry, and that's why I think we should go with 2 ETH per block. And regarding the Uncle EIP, I think it would be nice to have like feedback from someone who initially designed the Uncle rewards, because for me it appears that uncle and nephew rewards are not entirely broken, and changing this is like a deep technical like disruption, or how the Ethereum protocol works, and I would be careful with this.
So I just posted a link to
Alex
Vitalik's
Idris
comments.
on, yeah.
Yeah, Danny, you're saying the exact same thing I am, basically, so that
Yeah. He just, the beginning of his analysis is, quote, "I'm scared of this," and then goes into a brief analysis of why he doesn't think it's a good idea.
it goes back and forth even. So there's like multiple comments by him back and forth with the author of the EIP. Um, so I've been kind of skimming through it, and it's a very interesting conversation. I linked to it. It's linked in Gitter. It's also linked in the Zoom chat for those who want to take a look.
Cool. So that sounds like there is sufficient skepticism or just uncertainty about the uncle mechanism. So I think we can drop that off the table unless anybody wants to advocate to keep that on the table.
Question: is the uncle a function, the reward a function of the block reward, or is it
Yes,
an absolute number?
it's defined in terms of block reward.
Okay, cool. So it'll be effectively scaled down with a scaling down of the block reward.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think Vitalik's biggest argument in the comments was that there would be risk of large miner centralization, and that also there's better ways to adjust the uncle incentivization in order to convince anyone on the network to not have high uncle rates, including large miners. That's what I read from
Combined
it.
with, he speculates that it might encourage miners to adopt a simpler technique to cut down their uncle rate, which would be just to stop accepting transactions, which is empty blocks, which we don't want to encourage.
And we've seen that before as well, if I recall. I forgot when, but I feel like we've seen it before. There was a miner who was including empty blocks. I think it was during times of large congestion, particularly.
Yeah, it's happened. Yeah, right during attacks, and when we had lots of problems. Yes.
So it sounds like we have, I'm not going to assert that there is consensus, but it certainly seems like there is a decent amount of consensus around choosing the issuance reduction to 2 here. Does anybody want to advocate for doing something different, or does anyone want to advocate against doing that?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I would advocate against going with 2. Just there's a link to a Reddit comment from Vitalik here that issuance is a key economic parameter. This is from a year ago. At the end, he said, "Issuance is a key economic parameter, and I personally don't feel I or the foundation or client developers have the authority to dictate this. Perhaps it's worth some kind of vote." So the only vote we've had so far is the Ether chain carbon vote style coin vote, where people said that there's a clear preference for going down to 1 Ether, and not that I'm against reducing to 2, but but what's the kind of vote to? I guess it makes me uncomfortable to have a client developer meeting where we dictate, or client developers dictate that, well, we think one is too low, so let's just go with, we'll just dictate two.
I'm sorry, can I comment on this?
Yeah, me too.
I tried to explain this. I saw a lot of comments on Reddit and on GitHub that say, "Oh, look, there's a coin vote. It's like a massive coin vote, and everyone voted for like 1 ETH." But it's really important to keep in mind that this is like only one part of the Ethereum community that hold ETH. Like let's call them investors because they hold ETH, and they are naturally incentivized to vote for having like a very low block reward. But we also have other stakeholders in the community, like for instance miners, that are incentivized to like keep the issuance at a stable rate, or even increase it, because so that's like totally orthogonal to what this coin vote is actually suggesting. And what we are doing here is not to dictate a new block reward, but we try to find like a compromise somewhere in the middle, and agreeing on 2 ETH per block is like the best thing we can do.
Yeah, I would like to comment as well. So if we look at that coin vote and the results say favoring a reduction to 1, I think we should take that as an expression of will, the will to lower it. But I think we also need to be conservative with changes and make changes incrementally, and not like dictate something that goes against the will of the community, but yes, apply some conservative measures when doing changes, even so, but trying to keep with the like intent of the community.
Combined with the fact that we're delaying the difficulty bomb, not getting rid of it. So this conversation at some point in the medium future will come up, and we will also at that point have a little more context as to where the proof of stake changes are at. And so a conservative step in the direction that the community wants, and then a re-looking at this in a set timeline makes sense to me.
Also, I want to, I don't like the term dictate there, because I don't know, it has a connotation that doesn't exactly feel fair to what this process is, but maybe I'm just picking at semantics here.
I think that it's basically what Vitalik was saying, is there doesn't need to be this cabal of people making a decision, that there shouldn't, because I noticed in your quote from him, the word community wasn't mentioned. So I think that almost implied that it needs to be as close to a consensus from the community as possible, and then we just implement the code. But because there is no mechanism, and CoinVote, in my opinion, isn't a good measure at this point. It might have, it's arguable that it was in the past, but I don't know if it's for this particular issue a great measurement, in my opinion. I would say that because of all that, the fact that we're trying to implement what the community wants rather than dictate it kind of shows that we don't have a better way of deciding this, that we have to decide this because we're implementing it, and there's no one else able to effectively know how to have a signaling method from the community to make a for sure decision.
Okay, so the carbon vote was one type of vote. Then last week there was the call where miners, we took a poll from miners, and most of them seemed to be comfortable with 2, but not with 1. So the decision here to reduce to 2 is sort of a compromise between the extreme preference of the carbon vote to go down to 1 and miners being more comfortable with 2. But I also don't think it's necessary to choose a number, an exact number today, especially the block reward. You know, the more important, harder thing to decide is the proof of work change. But I don't know. I think there should be another opportunity for the community to vote or signal however they want. I'm not sure there's been enough time. I mean, how many days was that carbon vote even running for?
The carbon vote was running for a month, if I recall.
Yeah, and that's not very long.
Carbon vote is also just a really poor signaling
That's
mechanism.
one signal. Another signal is the troll box, which is kind of resoundingly 1.5 right now. Another signal is the miners, which was, we like where we're at, but 2 is reasonable. So there's a lot of signals.
And the miners also said Prog POW was one of the conditions, not the like absolute condition, but they were saying that is more important to them than the issuance reduction. And if there is an issuance reduction, we want a real conversation about ASIC resistant POW algorithms.
Yeah, I guess in summary, I don't feel that these signals are coming across cleanly enough. There's a lot of noise, and just saying that, you know, well, 2 sounds right because it's in between 1 and 3. I'm just not fully comfortable with that.
Yeah,
So, Casey,
go ahead.
Casey,
let me know, do you have some other idea of how we can get a better signal? Because I mean, what are the chances that we'll have better signals a month from now or 2 months from now? I mean, why postpone a decision that there's no indication that, you know, we will have perfect data later on?
I also want to reiterate the point that Danny made, which was that this is effectively a compromise in what we think is the right direction, with the knowledge that things are going to change as proof of stake comes into play.
Yeah, the reason that we're having to decide it today, Casey, was we previously had discussed the fact that if we want to hit the deadline of before DevCon for launching this hard fork, which at this point is still, I'm still myself skeptical that we're going to be able to do that. We would need to, as quickly as possible, decide every change that's going into the hard fork, so that Dimitri and others can properly create the test cases and edit the test cases and create new ones for changing the block reward. Therefore, it needs to be decided today, because for the last month we've been saying, let's decide it next time, let's decide it next time. So from my perspective, it needs to be decided today. But if enough people want it to be delayed, that's definitely something we can consider. And I agree with you that the signals have not been clean. So that's something to consider, certainly.
Yeah, those are all fair points. I just wish there was a better way to get these signals. I call it glow stick governance. So I don't think we have enough good tools for people to wave their glow sticks around and signal their preferences. And I wish we did, but
Okay. Yeah. Who else has comments on this? But yeah, I echo your sentiment. By the way, I wish there was a better way. I wish there was a way that we didn't have to have the burden to decide this, or have us look like we're dictators. But that's gonna be how it is until we find a better way. Who else has comments?
Until we move towards a long-term issuance policy related to proof of stake, which will be and should be a huge conversation at that point. But you know, it's the protocol being set up for 5 ETH per block was kind of a short-term vision for proof of work vision, and it's been longer, and we've reduced, and it's been longer, and we're reduced, and we're talking about reducing, and you know, incremental compromise until we get to the vision.
I have no strong opinion on whether we should reduce rewards or whether we shouldn't do that. But if we want to reduce rewards, as for me, it should be definitely 2 ETH. So first EIP with 1 ETH can be removed from the table, as for me. So it looks like we just need to decide on whether we want to reduce rewards or not, and if yes, we are going with 2 ETH reward. That's it.
Okay. I'll go ahead, Piper.
So there's been one dissenting voice from Casey on choosing 2 as the issuance. I feel like I've heard reasonable support for that as well. Does anybody else want to speak out against 2 or to push for a different option?
Additionally, I kind of want to add, does anyone have so sometimes with rough consensus from what I've read, a good thing to do is to also state, does anyone have a strong enough opinion that they're like, over my dead body, is this going to happen? Or that kind of a deal. Does anyone have an opinion that strong or even as weak as Piper, not weak, but as Piper's argument too? Piper's question, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, so to clarify my objection, it would be to go with 2 on the condition of a switch to Prague POW. So it's not over my dead body, but it would be, yeah, conditional on changing to Prague POW.
Casey, when you say that, do you mean conditional to changing it in this next hard fork, or to committing to, like, can you give some context to that?
Well, if there's not enough time to evaluate Prague POW before delaying the difficulty bombs, then I would argue to leave it at 3 and then delay the bomb and then change the reduce the block reward at the time that we change to Prague POW.
So the only problem is, what if we don't change to Prague POW?
Yeah, I have the same issue.
Then
in the sense that it needs to be evaluated further.
Yeah, I feel like they should be separate, personally.
Yeah, I'm having trouble understanding a strong reason to force these to be linked together, but I'm happy to hear that justification.
Yeah, I guess there is it does make sense to link reducing the block reward to delaying the bomb, but there's also a lot of signal from the community that they want to change the proof of work algorithm. So it's hard for me to say, well, we'll listen to the one about reducing the block reward, but we're not going to listen to the one about changing the proof of work algorithm.
No, so just so that we can jump into that, because we can skip ahead to that while we're discussing this, since it's related. Me and Paul have been looking at Prague POW, or I've been facilitating some discussions between miners and other people who've been working on Ethminer and other tools. So Paul, without and can you kind of give an overview of what you've seen so far from Prague POW, or what your opinion might be on it, if you can? If you haven't read enough or seen enough or gotten enough opinions about it, you don't have to go into detail, but otherwise, if you can kind of explain if you have a viewpoint on it.
So yeah, one comment to the previous discussion. I think it's hard to decouple the issue reduction and the proof of work change, because like both affect miners. So and that's why they are it. And so I was very skeptical about this 1 week ago, and I'm less now. So like I'm trying go issue by issue, and I think big technical stops from this in the specification. But I think there's a lot of to investigate over time. And so definitely it's not feasible to have it. Probably not this year even, because there's a lot of changes required. I mean, it's not only changing the algorithm, but it's also whole mining infrastructure that depends on that, and also the way we're going to switch. So, so my opinion is we cannot considering that to be included in Constantinople in any way.
I saw some slight concern in the fact that potentially some of the changes might be vendor specific and that it might entrench a certain vendor of GPUs. Were you able to investigate that or find any information around that?
Yeah, I personally, the Ogata girl who was on here the last time, or no, not the last time, the last time we talked about ProgPal months ago, um, they talked about how there was a review in a blog post by some major vendors, and I need to verify that, but so far it's looking like I'm going to be able to independently verify that. So when I do, I can come back with results on that, as can Paul. But that's something where it's kind of an issue of not wanting to be too specific on that, but to independently verify it and have a few of us kind of have that verification before we move forward declaring that there might be vendor specific issues with it, because so far everybody from the ProgPow team has said there's not.
So yeah, I don't have a definite answer to that yet, but yeah, we're working on this. And one of the things we can do here is just to take the software and benchmark big set of GPUs with that and like compare results. How much? So that can become a thing. We can bring it back to technical issue. So the expected hash rate decrease is by 2. It should be exactly by 2 because that's how the memory bandwidth requirement is increased. But we don't have the numbers, and in case we more likely considering this change, I think we can start benchmarking different GPU models from this day actually. So, but also like I think we should be more like we should I don't know how to say it.
We need
Like
to be.
I don't want
Yeah.
to waste a lot of time on that. In case like we're not convinced, we at least should. Unless we're not committed to do this change. I'm not saying like we definitely will do, but at least committed in the sense we'll review all the issues, and in case there's no technical problems, the change will happen.
I wouldn't go that far personally, but I would say that we should commit to investigating it to the fullest extent we can and then having a discussion on it. However, that discussion, because of this won't be going into Constantinople for sure, the earliest it would go in is July if we do an 8-month delay. So if we do an 8-month delay, the earliest it would go in is July. So the earliest that we could make a final decision on it would be late October. So that would give us plenty of time to evaluate it between now and then, and start to come to consensus or have votes on that. So I think that's a good sign, and I've made it crystal clear to the miners who are communicating with me that it would be at least June before this is implemented. So they're not going to be caught off guard, at least the ones I've talked to, including the ProgPow team.
Is anyone from the Prog Power team on? I'm still pretty skeptical about its ability to resist ASICs and haven't heard a lot from them since the original proposal.
They were supposed to be on the last call, but something came up, and I purposefully did not want any miners or proponents of the issuance reduction on this call because that would basically we did that last week, and I don't think everyone hashed out their arguments, and I don't think it would have been necessary to rehash that. However, ProgPow wasn't brought up in detail, so I see your point that there should be someone in here, but because the decision for ProgPow won't be made until right before or right after Constantinople, I didn't see us, in my opinion, I didn't see it worth it to bring them on for this particular call, but in hindsight, it probably would have been a good idea.
I don't think that's a big deal. Like, we have time on ProgPow and we have not a lot of time on Constantinople. So I'm wondering if we can reshift back towards figuring out what, if anything, we're going to do for Constantinople.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but I'd like to add that I kind of agree with Powell that it would be good if we come to rough consensus. Are we go? I mean, if it looks good, are we going to go with ProgPow and explicitly kind of state that? Because it's useless if Powell and Nick and whoever spends a lot of time and does a lot of work, and then we just nah.
So I have problem with what Piper proposed, because usually how it works, like we have this hard fork, and like then for months nobody is actually doing anything towards the next one, and so I don't think like we have time like change anything. We just probably will come back to this discussion like 2 months before the next difficult bump increase necessary.
I know that historically that's been the case. We are currently talking right now a lot about trying to get on a better schedule. So,
but to investigate that.
So my difficulty in actually having an opinion on ProgPow is that I am not an expert enough in the topic to have an opinion on it. So frankly, I need somebody who is a trusted expert in this to actually make that call. I'm happy to implement if it's what we choose. I'm not excited about spending dev time on a new proof of work algorithm, but that doesn't mean that I won't get on board if there's consensus that it's the right thing for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, so I kind of like, I'm not excited about it as well. So I would prefer not to do that personally. If like I don't want to actually spend time, but if that's necessary, I'm happy to. And I think one of the problems you mentioned is like we actually don't have experts at the moment. So like one of the problems we have to solve, we have to find them to actually to get information from them about this proposal, because I think nobody from the this let's say core devs team that usually come up to meetings are qualified to investigate that. So I think most of my work and Hudson work is I know more about this.
Yeah, and we've been doing that. Oh, go ahead, Casey.
I was going to say, I thought I saw a comment where the ProgPow team claimed it was 100% done. Why don't we invite them to launch a testnet with ProgPow?
Yeah, I've heard they haven't implemented it in Geth. I haven't confirmed that. I haven't heard that from the ProgPow team specifically, but I've seen other people say it's done. So they've had a lot of good implementation, and they say that they would implement it quickly if we were to make a decision one way or another, or even get close to making a decision. So I think that's a good ask. I think that should be, if we talk about it again, they should be on the next call. And I think that we should move on to issuance reduction again to see if we can make a decision on that today. But it sounds like there is a trend toward getting a lot of data on ProgPow.
Okay, I just like quickly want to comment to this. I think they have a lot of code. That's true. I've seen they have code for if hash library, the CPU one. So have code for if miner that is mostly for GPUs. But on the other hand, it's just a fork, and it's quite far away from being integrated to the main branches of any of these.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Do we have an evaluation of how harmful ASICs are for current mainnet?
We do, well, we have ancillary evidence from other blockchains about centralization risk, but that is also up for debate and argument, and so that would be a whole nother discussion. But to answer your question, we have enough evidence to discuss it.
Okay, because this, as for me, it should be a main consideration whether do we want to improve proof of work algorithm or not. Because if there is not big basics now, will lead to minor centralization. I mean that won't big miners become more powerful? Yep. So
Why?
why? Because this, as I understand, Propo, it's like make your hardware more efficient. So if you have more hardware, it will be more efficient, even more than now. And if you have more hardware than someone else, so we will become more powerful. I mean,
No, it changes. It proposes to change the amount of hashing power per piece of hardware proportionally, so you're still proportionally the same part of the network.
oh, so there is a linear dependency, right?
Yeah, it's on a per GPU. You don't get any scaling by having multiple GPUs.
Oh yeah, I see.
I guess ideally.
I'm sorry, I'm starting to panic a bit because we are not discussing any items for the next hard fork, and we only have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, we should get back on issue introduction for sure. Piper, what were you gonna
Right.
say?
I was the same thing, steering. So we've got, there's been voice, so Casey has expressed opinions against just choosing two. There's a decently broad acceptance that two has support as a conservative choice. Can we make a decision on that? Does anybody want to throw any new ideas in, or cover a different topic, or bring something back up regarding reducing issuance and whether we should or should not choose to?
So this still needs to be discussed in the context of the delay and the difficulty bomb. I know a meeting or two ago we had said, okay, if we're targeting 8 months hard forks, then we'll do a 12-month difficulty delay or bomb delay. I just need to make sure that we're talking about these two things at once because they're coupled in the EIP.
Yep, I am on. I'm still on that same page of liking that plan of a 12-month delay and an 8-month fork.
And yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. If anyone has kind of opposition to that, now's a good time to talk about it.
Okay. Couple more moments here, and speak now or forever hold your peace. I believe this is us making the decision to reduce issuance to 2, to do another hard fork 8 months after Constantinople, and to push the difficulty bomb to 12 months after Constantinople. All right, that sounds like consensus to me, or at least lack of opposition.
Yeah, I agree. Yay. we did it. Anyways.
So those EIPs, does the current the 2 reduction EIP have the correct delay in the difficulty bomb?
Afri does it?
No.
Okay, so that needs to be updated before final.
Yeah, okay. I can update this and put this on, what's the next step? Is it last call?
Or
Uh,
is it
do
accepted?
next step is last call, right, Nick?
So, sorry, just to
Uh,
clarify,
so consensus EIPs don't currently have last call. It would go from draft to accepted.
That's right.
so just to clarify, we just resolved to adopt an EIP that hasn't yet been written.
No, no, no. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 with a slight change to do the bomb defusal for 12 months.
Right, but you can't make a slight change to a finalized EIP, like Nick just said, you have to start from draft.
Casey, can we not argue semantics here? We can shift a small number like that in that EAP without it, with the full, like everybody here knows that isn't a giant change.
I mean, it is a draft at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in draft at the moment. So
Yes.
I agree semantics are not vital for saying today without putting the. So basically, we can't move the EAP to final yet. We'll have to do that between now and the next meeting, but we can say that we are going to move it to final once changes have been made, and I think that's appropriate enough. Casey, do you disagree?
Yeah, I didn't want to argue semantics. I just wanted to double clarify that what was just adopted hasn't been written yet.
Yep, yep. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
And then great. So we've come to a decision on that. Um, so let's really quickly. What time is it? We got 5 minutes. We can probably go a couple minutes over, maybe. If people have to drop off, that's okay. But there's nothing controversial about bitwise shifting. That's already been implemented in some clients. Speak up if that's not the case. What we're doing right now, by the way, is going through each EIP and seeing if there are any outstanding questions. Are there any outstanding questions on Skinny Create 2? When I was looking at the thread, it did not look like
Yes.
there were. Oh, okay. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Martin.
So there's one thing. But it's a pretty small thing. There's an error in the Skinny Create 2 test, so I guess that it has been wrongly implemented as TPP Ethereum. And to clarify, both Geth and Parrot have implemented collisions on Skinny Create 2. If there is an account which does not have a nonce and does not have code, but does have storage, then it will be wiped and overwritten. And I just realized, though, that this doesn't matter on mainnet, because on mainnet such an account would be empty and thus already collected upon touch. So it doesn't matter. But yeah, so there's a consensus issue and failing test case for Create 2.
Okay, but it sounds like that can be resolved in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Or in the EIP thread, either one.
I think there is a way to create such an account on a mainnet. Why not? Nonce might be the issue.
Yeah. Right. Nonsense issue.
I see then it's pure theoretical case.
At this point, yes. Yeah, so we can go to the next one.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything on Skinny Create 2? Okay, does anyone have any issues for ext code hash, the opcode? It's EIP 1052.
Yeah, actually, we haven't done much testing of Xcode hash, and well, I actually don't think that there might be any issues with this. But the reason why we found this issue for Create2 is because we started running some tests, and for Xcode hash, we are not running any tests yet.
Got it. And we're gonna have more meetings like this, Dimitri. So it won't. Basically, if there aren't tests written yet and we find issues later, we can discuss it in the All Core Devs chat or in the All Core Devs meetings, or if we have special meetings like this. Because I don't think we decided if we're gonna have these actually every other week, which would mean we have a meeting every Friday. Did we decide that, or did we not decide that?
I don't know if we have to do one every week, but an accelerated schedule as we get close to the hard fork seems prudent. So
I
Yes, I
agree with that. The last EIP is net gas metering for S store without dirty maps. That's 1283. Did we resolve issues with that? I remember there were a couple, and I think we resolved them and we updated the EIP. Cool. It sounds like that's gonna go fine. As far as clients go,
Can I have two questions?
yeah, sure.
It's about create two. So one is, so we go with definition where the empty account, for account being empty, where we ignore the storage. Is it like consistent with the other rules we have, or did I get it wrong?
It's actually consistent with EAP 684, which was accepted and applied retroactively to deal with a case where, and that was when we discussed the first version of Create 2. And then it was retroactively decided the rules for collisions that they depend only on nonce. And
Okay.
so,
But it's different for state clearing EIP, or it's the same?
So, sorry, so it's different because state clearing EAP cares about value as well, whereas 684 doesn't care about value because you can send some money to an account before you create it.
Okay, that's fine. And one more thing, I have this change to create two that changes SHA-3 to Ketchak 256, and that cannot be merged. And maybe we couldn't work around Vitalik in this in his duty to merge that and just do it without his consent.
Yeah, if there's a solution to an EIP that Vitalik has basically agreed on but not updated it in a technical way, you can start implementation and testing without the EIP being updated, is my opinion, so things don't slow down, and then we'll really push for it to be updated.
Yeah, but every meeting, and like this issue seems not to want to be resolved. So I'm just changing the naming for the hash function in the CIP.
Sounds good to me. Anybody have a dissenting opinion?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question or what we're
Can
answering?
we merge SHA-3 to Ketchak 256 for create 2? Because officially the author of the AP should do that, and the author is Vitalik, and he seems.
I tried.
Yeah, I know.
tried to nudge him.
I don't see an issue with changing the name, and I would be surprised if Vitalik objected, but I can't actually speak for him.
Can you Danny, just ask
Yeah,
him? Like,
I'm gonna just message him and get him on record as saying that's fine.
Okay, thanks. Okay, that's all.
Okay. Anything else on the EIPs before we, well, actually, we're basically out of time, but we'll go through client updates real quick for those who could stay on.
Can I sum this up real quick? We have 4 EAPs that are going into Constantinople: 145 bitwise shifting, 1014 skinny create, 1052 xcode hash, and 1283 net gas metering without dirty maps. And those are all accepted, and we are all on board with those being the 4 Constantinople EAPs.
And then also once
Plus
1, 2, 3, 4 is done. Yep.
Correct. Okay.
Can I speak for a second?
Absolutely, Alex.
So I actually had an e-proposal, but I added it only a couple of hours ago onto the PM list, and it wasn't really placed onto the agenda. But it's something I would like to discuss at some point. It's EIP 1352. I'm not sure if anybody ever looked at it, apart from Nick.
I will paste it into the chat so that people can view it, and then is it okay if we talk about it next core dev meeting? Just bring it all up, because it's not going into Constantinople, but it could go into the next hard fork or whatever we need to do, unless it's urgent. or like really, really, really urgent.
I haven't read this, but Alex, does this actually change consensus, or is this more of a conceptual change?
I don't think it would change consensus. There's one line in the EIP where there's a comment from Nick, is this even worth checking for? So that would be the only consensus critical part, mostly. Yeah, so if just everyone just looks at it outside of this meeting, then I think I would say 99% this doesn't really change anything, and it could go into Constantinople.
We're more likely to be simultaneously all hit by meteors than for it to affect.
Could you repeat that, Nick? I got cut out for me.
I said we're more likely to all be simultaneously hit by meteors than for this is to affect consensus.
All right. Yeah. Go, Piper.
So I just at a glance, this looks great, but I wonder what we get. Like, can we just slate this for the next hard fork, since we like putting it in now doesn't really change anything? Is that a valid approach here?
I mean, why delay in that case?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would suggest to discuss this next week.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss
and everybody
this next
should have a
week.
look at it offline.
Yeah, so we can discuss it next, or in 1 or 2 weeks, depending on when we decide the next meeting is, and then we will also go ahead and we don't have to wait until the hard fork actually happens to implement it if it's not needed for a hard fork, so we could do it before then. But we'll talk about that in a week or two. Yeah, since it's over time, I don't. Does anyone think we need to give client updates? I have that Constantinople tracker, and it's pretty much up to date.
I don't think we should. We normally do them every 2 weeks, and unless anybody has anything they want to explicitly surface, I don't see a need to go to Betty's updates.
Yeah, we merged the last from Big 4 last EIP implementation today, so we can start generated testing for all of the 4.
So I would like to propose that we put together a working group for ProgPow to look into that, and that those persons can regularly kind of present where they're at and how it feels, how ProgPow seems to behave. And I don't know who would be in that group, maybe Powell, maybe Nick. They could reach out to people, experts, and you, Hudson.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that
all rolling.
There's potential for grant here if there's some sort of GPU expert that wants to do benchmarking or something like that. That there's not opportunity there to bring in more data.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I wanted to talk with guys who actually develop ETH miner. If they would agree to actually do some benchmarks and check out the ETH miner implementation of ProgPow and something like that.
Maybe we can continue this in the chat in all core devs.
Yeah, that sounds good. We've agreed that we're going to have a group together for that. Do we want a meeting in 1 week or 2 weeks? Personally, I would go 2 weeks, just because I don't think there's going to be anything major updated in the next week, and there's going to be some of us at ETH Berlin, and then a second event that I forgot about in Asia, I think.
2 weeks sounds good to me.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks it is. We will have a meeting in 2 weeks. I will remind everybody a little more often, probably. Does anyone want a calendar invite? We should get that together. I think that'd be a good idea.
Also, we will be starting exactly on time in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's another change. 2 weeks, starting exactly on time instead of waiting like 5 to 10 minutes after. So
the calendar invite will be for 5 or 10 minutes before the time.
Dude, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. All right, I think we're all good here. Thanks, everybody. Big shout out to Piper for directing a lot of the conversation. Thanks so much, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a great day or night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.